I've got a treat for you today. I got the opportunity to interview Dr. Jim Burns. Jim Burns is the president over at Homeword. He's written a ton of books, ton of articles. If there is one guy that could help you in family ministry that you say, this is the guy that I want to have speak to us, that I want to have come lead a conference, that guy, probably in all youth ministry circles, most youth ministry circles, they would say Jim Burns. And so Jim has years, decades of service, and I really think you're going to be blessed by this interview. Jim is so gracious to do this, and I really think you're going to enjoy this. So thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Youth Ministry 6.3. Thank you. This is Robbie Mackenzie, Youth Ministry 6.3. I'm with the one and only Jim Burns. Jim is a great guy. He's the president of Homeword. Homeword does a lot of resources for not only youth ministers, but it's a holistic approach to families, to parents, to students, and to volunteers, to anyone associated with families. And so Jim has agreed to interview with me about family ministry. So Jim, thank you so much for being on.
Hey, my pleasure, Robbie. Great to be with you. I actually even dressed up, but not for you. I have this fancy lunch where they're actually taking me to a place where they said you can't go in a T-shirt. So there I am.
Well, good. This is about as dressed up as I get as well. So that's
good, man.
That's good.
I combed my hair for you too.
Very good. First question, just curiosity. This doesn't really have to do with family ministry per se, but Jim, you've been in youth ministry a good while. How has youth ministry changed over the years, and maybe from your own context, how has it remained the same?
Yeah, great question, by the way.
Thank you.
Well, I think it's remained the same, that youth workers typically love kids. They want to see kids make right decisions. I love the heart of people who are in youth ministry. It's not easy. Nobody said it was ever going to be easy, but anyway, it's the people are the same. When I started in youth ministry back in the dinosaur years, we didn't have resources. We didn't have technology. I mean, Al Gore had not invented the internet, so we wouldn't be having a conversation like this.
Right.
So today, we have so much more resources and things like technology and stuff available. It's really cool. At the same time, where I think I see it moving is, we're more worship focused. It's great. We're more church focused. We had a season there where it was mainly parachurch. Yep. Today, the best youth ministries are oftentimes in the church. And it's what we're going to be talking about. I'm seeing really what I would call a movement of God, where we're becoming more family based. And, that has all kinds of different ramifications, sure. But everybody is going, fine. We know we need to help kids. And really one of the ways to do it is to help their parents. Now, obviously, that's a problem with kids who aren't in the church because of their parents. Their parents aren't going to church. A lot of youth workers don't have that. 50% of their kids may not be going to church or even more.
Oh, sure.
But we are figuring out that a latest study said 300% better chance of kids staying in the faith after high school if they had faith conversations in the home. That's remarkable.
Wow. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm talking with Jim Burns. Jim, just what are some issues? And I know a lot of these issues are contextual. Some may be different from here in Nashville, Tennessee than over in California. But just generally speaking, what are some issues facing families that are challenging, not only to families as well, but to youth ministers?
Yeah. Well, I think there's lots of them. Correct. And I think actually one of the issues for parents of teenagers anywhere, whether it be Nashville, Tennessee, Dana Point, California, where I am, or wherever, is that today parents have to become students of the culture.
Absolutely.
Youth workers are, but parents don't understand the culture today. They think it was like it was when they were growing up, and it ain't that way. I was speaking to a bunch of students last Friday night at a youth rally in Honolulu. Somebody had to go, and so I had to go to Hawaii.
I'm sorry you had to
but
suffer.
I said, I wouldn't want to be your age.
Right.
First age of internet pornography, age 11.
Wow.
12 to 17-year-old guys are the greatest new users of internet pornography. The amount of stuff that's being thrown at our kids. And so that's everywhere. And it's both on a parent side and on the youth worker side. It's just a different time, a different season. And it's not by any means just pornography, but, the way we deliver it. You and I are talking, via a Skype, and in 2008 is when it changed, where kids were on online more than they were watching television. That'll never change. That'll never go back.
Right.
So now the influence might be more of a Facebook social networking thing as opposed to whatever the latest, greatest television show. Doesn't mean that television doesn't influence. It's just, the world has changed culture-wise.
Absolutely. When I came into, by the way, I've been here in my context at Main Street Church of Christ. It's been my only full-time youth ministry gig. And so when I first came as a 23-year-old youth minister, I had no clue how I minister to not only teenagers, but the intimidating thing for me was, how do I minister to families? And so what do you see as the role of the youth minister to families?
Yeah, I see you coming alongside families. There are people who would say youth ministers need to get out of the way. I mean, there's a generation now that says, some certain people, I disagree with them, but they say, fire every youth pastor and just let the families do it. I totally disagree with that, because I think kids need to be in a youth ministry context as well. But I think you see yourself coming alongside. I think you see yourself at assisting families to succeed. In some ways also affirming them, but also giving them lots of resources. What a youth worker can do is they don't have to be the resource, but they can give them resources. So if a seminar is coming to town, you let them know about it. You let them, maybe through a parent newsletter, you let them get more information. At Homeword, we have a parent newsletter that goes out called the Good Advice Letter. And it's 7 minutes a month, but it's giving content to parents. Well, every youth worker can do that. They can either steal ours, because the essence of creativity is the ability to copy.
Absolutely.
They can either steal ours, or they can, do their own stuff. But by providing resources for parents, you're really helping parents big time. Now, it'll be frustrating because some of the parents aren't going to do it. It's just the way parents are. But at least you're providing those resources. Parents should know what you're doing in your classes with them or in your youth group. They should know the content type stuff. That's kind of the communication thing. Study done at Group magazine, and they ask, what do you as parents, it was for parents, what do you as parents wish your youth workers would do? Number one thing was give more information to them.
Wow.
Information about the youth group. When is the summer camp? Well, it's kind of early to be thinking about that, but not really when they're still putting their schedules together now. And many of the kids would rather go on the summer camp with church than with the family, but you want them to do both.
When I first came, talking about when I first came here in this context, I remember trying to do it all myself. And you said one of the biggest roles for youth ministers to families is to come alongside of them. On the flip side of that, what do you see as dangers for those who try to do youth ministry by themselves?
I think it's a long, lonely road. I'm not sure that's Jesus didn't do that. Jesus, if you look in Luke 12, he went away and prayed, so he was by himself. And then he came into his community, his disciples, and had replenishing relationships and did ministry together. Even Jesus did that. And then he did his ministry. You see kind of that solitude, yes, needed prayer. Even Jesus. Then replenishing relationships. Then he went and did his ministry. So, I think we need all three of those, obviously. And what we tend to do is burn out because we're not doing it, in connectivity with other people. The other thing is I have a certain style, so I relate to a certain type of kid. Mm-hmm. So I need a group of people around me who are diverse.
Absolutely.
So if I'm a nerd, great, I'm going to relate to nerds. But if I'm a sporto guy, then I'm going to relate to the sporto people. My wife is an introvert and I'm an extrovert. Well, Kathy would have one good conversation with one kid the entire time. I'd have a shallow conversation with every kid. Well, this ministry was really needed.
Right.
Okay. So a diversity coming together really helps kids find somebody else to relate to rather than just one person.
Sure, absolutely. All this talk about family ministry, say I just get a new job and it's my first gig and I want to know, Jim, where do I start when it comes to trying to help families grow spiritually? What advice would you give me?
Yeah, I would ask the parents what their needs are. Okay. And literally, I would bring them together. I call this the chocolate dipped strawberry meeting. So you don't just put cruddy potato chips and some lousy Kool-Aid. Right. Honestly, have somebody else, not you, because you're probably not going to make the chocolate dipped strawberries. I wouldn't, but I would find a mom in the area, in my church to kind of host a meeting and say, I want to hear, what are your needs? How can I serve you? How can the church serve you? What would be the best way to help you help your kids grow spiritually? And listen to them. Make a list and then begin fulfilling some of it. And what they're going to say are the things that we already know in some ways.
Absolutely.
But, they might say, we don't have a clue how to do family times with our kids devotionally. Fine. So give them various from different resources, become kind of a resource junkie and give them resources. You'll hear them say we don't spend enough time together because, even sometimes well-meaning people in the church are too busy with all their stuff, and so they never spend any time together. And don't program 24/7, 365, because frankly, we're in competition then with the family.
Absolutely. Something that I've been interested ever since this research came out from Fuller is the sticky faith research, and it's concluded that the need for intergenerational relationships. And I kind of read your stuff years ago, and I thought that's kind of echoed what you've been saying all along. Yeah. So how has this reinforced sort of your approach to youth ministry and family ministry over the years?
Well, I actually told Kara Powell, who's in charge of the Sticky Faith movement, right. I told her yesterday that I'm helping her with her kids' schooling and vacation because I'm telling everybody to get Sticky Faith. I love the Sticky Faith movement. But what it's saying is that it didn't work over the years when kids were kind of in the basement and didn't relate to anybody, their parents or anybody else in the church. They didn't feel connected to the church. So they graduate from high school and they graduate from the church, they graduate from God. What Sticky Faith is saying is intergenerational conversations mean that they now have a part of the larger body of Christ. Oh, yeah. And in doing that, they're going to stay. For example, within your own fellowship, the Church of Christ, right. Big problem with kids leaving because for a season, there was a really cool and groovy youth group going on someplace else, but they didn't feel connected to the greater body of the church. So today, to integrate that, they're going to stay because, you know what, they really need relationships. Older people, or a lot of them don't have a grandparent in them, so they need to know somebody who loves God who's a grandparent. But the grandparents are going, hey, I can't relate to these kids. I don't like what they wear. I don't know their language. I don't even like the songs that they're singing or whatever it may be. But you know what? We need each other is what Sticky Faith is saying. And what I love about it is it's not just saying to integrate, but it's also saying minister together. So, part of what they're saying in Sticky Faith is if you do a mission trip, don't just go with kids. Bring some adults along too, because the integration is phenomenal. They're ministering together, but they're also, connecting.
That's great. A question a friend of mine asked, Andy Blanks from Youth Ministry 360. He had this great question. He said, research, and he included, National Study in Youth Religion and Lifeway Research and others. He says that parents are the chief influencers of a child's faith. And then he said, you know what? Well, Kenda Dean in her book, Almost Christian, talked about that the students are practicing a watered down gospel. And so his question is, isn't it fair to assume that the biggest issues is not so much that we're discipling students wrong, that maybe we're missing out on discipling the parents of students? And so how do we as youth ministers deal with that when the discipling is not so much to the teenagers but to the parents?
Right. And you're right in every one of those levels. I mean, I think Kenda is right in her stuff. I know that it's right that the most influential spiritual influence is mom, actually. Right. And then a distant second is dad. Oh, so dads need to kind of fuck it up here. But what that's saying is in youth ministry, we need to figure out ways to help. That's funny. I'm getting emails and I didn't turn off the deal. So there we go. It's okay. But we need to be able to help parents grow in their own faith. Now, I don't see that just as a youth worker problem. I see that as a church issue. Right. And so I think if we're really going to try to help families succeed, that the whole church needs to buy into this. And, the preacher, the pastor, should take the lead in this in many ways. Very good. I can remember Doug Fields and I talking when he was an intern for me, and this dates me and him. I think I had hair then, and he had some. But I used to say, at the church we went to, a lot of the parents would drop the kids off, and then they'd go to dinner. We were like their babysitters, for high school and junior high. But we used to say, it'd be more effective if the kids would drop the parents off, and we could then, minister to the parents, and then the parents would go back and minister to the kids. But that doesn't always happen, of course. But the fact is the church has to have not a silo mentality where you do adult ministry and you do men's ministry and women's ministry and youth ministry and children's ministry, and nobody talks to each other. Sure. So a good church means that it's a cohesive gathering of saying, how are we going to help the spiritual formation of our congregation, and we're going to do it best when our families are, being discipled. Adults, parents need to know how to do this.
Absolutely.
Right before you, I'm speaking in St. Louis in a couple of weeks, and I'm doing a marriage conference actually, but then for the service, they're just going to interview me on parenting issues. And I said, do you do this often? He goes, no, it's the first time we've ever done it. It's kind of a mega church. And I said, how cool that you're actually, in many ways, you're teaching parents how to parent,
right,
because that may be more important than actually some of the theological points. And I'm not putting down theological points, but I'm saying some of the theological points that we talk about don't have the same felt need as, my goodness, how do you parent? When Kathy and I, we had been infertile, so we didn't have kids for the first 10 years, then we adopted Christy. I remember the first night we go, oh my goodness, what did we do? We don't have any clue what to do with this little kid who's pooping and crying and whatever. Well, I wish I could have gone to the church and got more information on even some of the basics of parenting. But at my particular church, we couldn't get that. We could get information on, what we thought about baptism and what we thought about all this, and rightly so, that's cool. But we should have also had something on, so how do you parent this kid?
That's great.
We didn't.
Yeah. That's a great point. All these questions dealing with family ministry, and I appreciate you so much for being on, Jim. Last question. You are president of Homeword, and so I wanted to kind of, for anyone who's maybe not seen Homeword, I'm sure most of them have, but kind of tell us, what does Homeword do that helps youth ministries, that helps families, that helps individuals here in our local church and churches abroad?
Yeah. Well, what we're trying to do at Homeward is help families succeed, period.
Yeah.
And when I wake up in the morning, I'm thinking about kids, believe it or not, still. And I figure that for me, at my age and at my skill set, the most effective way to do it is to come alongside church leaders and to come alongside parents and help them help kids. And so Homeward is a resource ministry, and we offer what we call listen, click, read, and attend. So we listen means that we have an incredible radio broadcast. 1 million people today will hear it. But it's also, 50,000 people a month do the podcast.
Oh,
so,
wow.
But they can hear on radio stations, different places, or they can just do the podcast or stream. It's a great program. And our market is, we call Becky age 30 to 50, and she has teens and preteens and her husband, but more women listen to it than men. So anyway, that's a cool resource. And it's free. Secondly, is the Click. We've got a great website with lots of articles and tips. Jim Liebelt, who handles that in our ministry, was a youth worker. He's still at heart a youth worker, and he puts together a daily devotional. He puts together every Friday, and every youth worker who hears this should do it. They should look at a culture brief. He sends out a culture brief. Thousands of people, over 7 million of these happen in a year.
Oh, wow.
But he sends out a culture brief that gives them the latest things on culture. We have a good advice parents newsletter. All this stuff is free, but the website has great stuff too. So anyway, they should look at that. Seminars. Homeward is the largest provider of parenting seminars in the country right now. Guys like Doug Fields, myself, Duffy Robbins, Mark DeVries in the Nashville area, and a host of others are our speakers, great speakers. And those are phenomenal things. Some churches are too small to do it because it's costly to bring these guys in. So you might have to get, like it was a bunch of Church of Christ's in the Little Rock area,
sure,
where they got about 7 churches together, and it ends up they did it in a high school auditorium. Well, they had like 700 people there.
Oh, wow.
Well, they made major dollars because they charged the people $15, and obviously that, nothing like a youth worker figuring out how to make money instead of lose money.
I was just about to say that.
Right, seriously. But, we do these seminars every week someplace around the country, and, they're wonderful. We also have something called the FAM conference that Doug Fields and I are hosting. Doug is now on our staff at Homeward.
That's great.
And Doug and I are sponsoring a FAM conference on family ministry, and we have amazing speakers and amazing tracks. Like people can take a youth ministry track with Kara Powell on Sticky Faith, or they could take a children's ministry track or a marriage ministry track or a women's or men's ministry, urban family, with key leaders in the country. And then our general sessions are the best. Jim Daly, who's the new president of Focus on the Family, who's amazing. A woman from your area called Renee Rochester, who is speaks a lot of youth specialties things, but phenomenal stuff on family. And so each session, it's one of these 2.5-day things, but it happens in May. It happens at Azusa Pacific, where Doug and I are now a part of the Homeward Center for Youth and Family at Azusa Pacific too. And so anyway, lots of good stuff, and then we have lots of resources. So a youth worker doesn't have to anymore go, how am I going to help parents? people like us and others. But at Homeword, you could get resources on parenting and marriage, and then help them with small groups or whatever. So lots of good stuff Homeword's doing.
Well, Jim, I appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for being on. Hang on a little bit. This is Youth Ministry 6.3 with Jim Burns, Family Ministry. It comes from Nehemiah 6:3. Says, "I'm doing a great work, and I cannot come down." Thank you so much, Jim.